What's up, everybody? I hope that George enjoys his theme song. So you wanna get right to the core. So you wanna know what it's all for. So you wanna come off knowing more. Well, you better get hip. The podcast by George. So you wanna get straight to the show. So you wanna know what you need to know. You wanna know what we're all here for. Well, you better get hip. The podcast by George. Podcast by George. Podcast by George. He knows what he's fighting for. It's podcast by George. Podcast by George. Wanna know what we're fighting for?
Well, so hello, hi, how are you? And welcome on in to a special Monday afternoon live line edition of Podcast by George. I don't do Monday afternoons very often, but we're doing one today, and it's one that tickles me, one that I have a lot of fun with, and I know you will too, because we're welcoming back an old friend, returnee to the podcast, and it's Ron Placone. And folks, I think of Rod Placone first and foremost. He's a comedian. He's been seen on the Jimmy Dore Show, Crosstalk, TMZ, Free Speech TV, The Young Turks, Redacted Tonight, and more. His debut album, Agnostic Holiday, is in rotation on Sirius XM. He hosts the YouTube show podcast, Get Your News On with Ron. And along with the political party roommates, the stand-up clips, kind of the shorts that he does, which are just great. These things are a lot of fun and a heck of a lot more. So let's see if we can get him on in, and hope that our audio and video is working. It seemed to want to go south on us there in the little warm-up that we did. Ron, can you see and hear me okay?
I can, George. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's great. It's
Good.
great to have you back. And, you know, I always like to play that theme song at the beginning. And I got to thinking while we were in the green room, Ron, I used to be a disc jockey. I was a newsman. I'm getting to be a gray beard, boy. I want to tell you something. And I never had a theme song for any of my shows or anything till I got one from you. And I tell everybody, you got to have a theme song. Everybody needs one. The holidays are coming up, and they can get one just by going to Ron Placone on Patreon and signing up. Tell people about that.
Yeah, it's a perk that I offer all my patrons, and it's a lot of fun. I'll make you a theme song, and I've done it for other shows, like in your case. I've also done it for couples. I've done it for, oh man, now I'm the only one in the show. George just
I'll be back. I'll be back.
I've done it for couples. I've done it for just people who like to party and they wanted a theme song about it. I've done it for some people in their jobs. I've done it for authors. It's just a lot of fun. I've done it for some people's pets. So it's just a cool perk, and I feel like it makes a pretty cool gift because A, it's affordable. It's just pay whatever you can, and B, no shipping is involved, which as someone who lives in the LA harbor, let me tell you something. If you can avoid shipping, do it. So yeah, if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Rob Placone. And I'm glad that your theme song's been serving you well, George. I had a lot of fun with it.
The thing I like about it is it's got kind of that punk progression kind of a sound to it. A Joe Strummer t-shirt on and that type of thing. And it fit, I kind of like to hit people with a hammer every once in a while on the show. And that's kind of the way that sounds to me. I mean, it's kind of a heavy-handed beginning. We're going to get serious and we're going to get real on Podcast by George. And that's great. Well, I wanted to mention that you got so many projects, so many moving pieces. One big thing that is new, just over the past 6 months or so, you announced a movie that's coming up. And I've got the trailer because I'm going to start with this fun stuff. And this is a lot of fun. I mean, this trailer is hilarious. I mean, I even putting this together, Ron, for the show, I started to laugh looking at this thing. And I'll show people why when we break it down. But tell us before we start the trailer a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to break ground on a movie. It's called Left at Wall, and it's loosely based on the incident that happened. I guess it was January of 2021. I'm trying to was it 2020 or 20, but I think it was 2021, where a bunch of people online bought a video game stock called GameStop, and that caused the price to go up, and that screwed over a bunch of hedgers because what they were doing was they were engaging in a process called short selling, where you borrow a stock for a certain amount of money, you sell it right away, but then you wait hoping the stock goes down. So when you go to pay up, it's less than what you sold it for and you make money. This is something that people do in Wall Street all the time. And they try to manipulate the market to the best of their ability so that their bets win. And it's a pretty shady thing, but there's nothing illegal about it. So a bunch of people online gathered and beat these hedge funders at their own game. And everyone on Wall Street kind of freaked out about it. But it just kind of goes to show you, just what a total scam the whole thing is. And so it's a movie loosely based on that. But it's told through the lens of two brothers who one brother is a struggling writer in Hollywood. I play that brother. It's not too far fetched. And then the Wall Street brother is played by a hilarious comedian named Gareth Reynolds, who is the co-host of the Dollop podcast for anyone who might be into podcasts. And it's a fun film, and we've been crowdfunding some of it. We also have a couple investors, and we're looking for some more. So I don't know if anybody who is a listener of your show has a little bit of means and is interested in investing in a film. But if that is you, if you're listening and you're thinking, I want to invest in an indie film, you can go ahead and email me at ronplacone.com, because yes, we are searching for investors and we have a couple lined up now. But yeah, it's just an indie film project, and it's looking like it's going to happen for sure. It's just a matter of how soon. So I'm pretty excited about it. I never thought I'd do an indie film, but I wrote this script with the intention of making it. So
Well, I encourage people to participate, be a part of this. And one of the biggest, I did it because I like Ron, but I also did it because I love the movie and the context here. And I'm going to show this little clip. And I'm going to, it's all personal context because Ron, I married a really good looking woman. I mean, I married a woman that was in a high school class of 600 or 700 people. And honest to God, you go through the high school annual, if you had to pick out the best looking girl in the class, it's her. I mean, that's who my wife was. And I was never a looker ever and still not in my entire life. I mean, some people got brains, some people got bronze. I got neither. And so this first little clip that I want to show from the trailer, I mean, really strikes home with me. I want people to kind of look at it in that context and watch this as Ron or I think are you Don or John in this? I can't
So
remember.
yeah, the main characters are John and Don, and
Yeah.
that's on purpose. Their parents made their names rhyme, but the Wall Street brother is Don, and the other brother, which is played by me, is John. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
watch this. Now, John, real proud here, and he's going to announce the fact that he's telling his brother that he's going to get married. Now, okay, so let me let me bring this clip up.
I'm gonna propose.
Shut up. God, I hope Sarah says yes, man. That would be shocking. Well, the whole thing's been shocking. As an outsider, like the first time I saw you with her, I was like, you know what I mean? You look like you want a reality show. And she's, I'm happy because I didn't think there was any way this would last this long.
Thanks.
And that gulp that you kind of make there at the end, I mean, that's great acting, I think. I mean, that is so realistic. You don't see that gulp thing in movies very often. Honest to God, Ron, I had people tell me couple of things. They said, well, you don't ever want to, you don't want to marry a good looking woman. I'm like, yeah, what? You don't want to marry a good, I do. I mean, I want to marry a good looking woman. And the other thing that people used to tell me all the time was they would come up to me and say, I can't believe that you're getting married. I didn't think you would ever get married. And I kind of like, well, what's that? Is that a compliment? Like I'm a big, swordsman of some type with all kinds of women, or is it an insult because you think no woman's ever going to be interested in me? I mean, I never knew how to take that exactly. God, I can't believe that you're getting married, and that's kind of what I see when you and your brother there are talking. I mean, that's a great sequence, and these are just snippets or snatches out of the movie. I mean, what we're looking here isn't how it plays out.
Yeah, the point with the trailer is totally separate from, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the trailer is the story of the movie, but the trailer was written separately. I wrote the trailer after I wrote the movie, and the point of the trailer was, I mean, the comparison I like to make as kind of just an aging punk rocker myself is it's the trailer is basically the demo tape of saying like, this is the movie that we're trying to make. This is the story condensed in like 3 minutes, but all the scenes will be different in the final, in the final cut of the movie. But yeah, I mean that's sort of, his brother is not meaning to be totally
Exactly.
condescending and put him down.
Yeah.
But he totally is, and
Yes.
it's part of the story. And I can relate a little bit in real life too, to what you were talking about, George. My wife is very good looking, and I think it's fair to say she is the much better looking out of the two of us. I don't think I'm an ugly guy. I think I'm average, but yeah, in a place like LA, we will occasionally, like if we're just walking down the street, we'll occasionally get like double takes because people think that for someone who looks like me to be with someone who looks like her,
Yeah.
like I have to be famous or something. So people will be like, is that somebody? And then usually they're just like, ah, shit, that's not Seth Green or something like that. So yeah. So I can relate to that. I mean, I don't know if that, bled into how I wrote the character or not, but
It had a friend of mine. It was a compliment actually, but he saw my wife one time. He says, "Dude, what'd you do? Sneak up on her in the dark? How did you ever end up with a woman that looked like that?" Okay, so here's this next clip, and the great thing about this, and I want you to talk about it when we come back here a little bit. Not only the clip, but there's like I think this is a clip that has a cameo in it here in the lower right hand part of the screen. So watch it.
I'm a writer. My more successful brother, he's on Wall Street. I don't know how it happened.
So, how was Dawn?
He's done.
It's Tiffany. They want to meet up tonight. Dawn has some exciting news.
Tell him to send the cliff notes to whogivesashit at Gmail.
John, come on. He's your brother.
Not my call.
You wouldn't understand. The whole thing with Wall Street, John, is how complicated it is, okay? Like, we're going to short sell Game Bites, but to you wouldn't understand.
I bet I would.
Okay, so and that kind of lays out the premise of the movie, and okay, the cameo there, that's Lucy, the cat in the lower right hand corner. How's she doing, Ron? I was concerned about her for a while.
I appreciate that. Yeah, she had some health issues this year. I mean, she's not a young cat. She's 15 years old, so she did have some health issues, but she is doing a lot better now. We got her we kind of pinpointed what was wrong, and she's on some medication, and it's nothing major, it's nothing atypical for a cat her age. It's just something we have to be mindful of, and she's doing a lot better now. And overall for her age, she is still a very active cat. Like she still plays a lot. A lot of people who meet her are surprised that is how old she is. I'm really happy for that, and I hope that continues for a long time now. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, rewatching that trailer, it's amazing how it segued or kind of dovetailed into my life and what I've been going through here recently. A good example is I tell people I went to get a new cell phone, first time in maybe 10 years at least. This past week, I went into the cell phone store. And honest to God, I was thinking of Ron Placone because this guy was giving me the pitch for a cell phone and the explanation of what it entailed and the plan and all this kind of stuff. And honest to God, Ron, I did not know what in the hell the guy was talking about. It was like he was throwing dust up in the air. And it reminds me of that short that you put together about ranked choice voting and how people say we can never have that because it's so complicated. Like you could explain it in 30 seconds. It's so simple. It's like ordering off of a menu in a restaurant. And compared to what this guy was explaining for a cell phone, I mean, my God, ranked choice voting is very easily understood. And that can't be an excuse for not having it, not being able to understand it. Yeah. So I want to bring this next little piece up for this trailer. I want to get this on because I've already got some comments, some people coming into the show that want to ask Ron Placone some questions here. So this is the last clip I'll show here of the trailer. This will take us out of the clip. Here we go.
John, I just can't anymore. Save your drama for the page. I just can't.
What are you saying?
I think we need a break.
Awesome. No girlfriend, no work, no agent. Is this rock bottom? We're gonna do a short sell. You wouldn't understand. By the way, short selling, not that difficult. In a video game store, that's a pretty safe bet. The only way that could go wrong is if...
Game Bites. We need to buy shares of it.
What? Why?
A bunch of hedgers are trying to short sell it. We all buy shares. That drives the price up. Then, when they go to pay up, it's worth more than what they paid for it. We win, they lose.
You know, they always say if you can't beat them, join them. They never say join them to beat them. Kind of beat them at their own game.
You're really passionate about this.
It's personal.
We'll start buying slowly. We've got some big names involved too. By the time the markets close, should be at least double the price.
I'll be able to pay for my surgery.
I'll be able to knock out all that student loan debt. If we pull this off, it'll only be the beginning. They'll fear us because they'll have to. You know what destroys a market?
Fear. Let's do this.
That's great. And of course, Ron is writing that. A couple of things there at the end struck me, Ron. Fear. I mean, that really is why we are where we're at today. Why everything is so screwed up. Why we're so easily influenced by propaganda. It's all about fear. People talk about it when it comes to Fox Network, but it's across the entire cable news network channels. Fear is what's dictating, kind of calling the tune in America right now, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's always been that way. I mean, fear sells and fear, manipulates, and absolutely. And in the context of that film, they want to disrupt a system. And so they're thinking, okay, if people are scared, if people are by people, they mean, the elites in Wall Street, if they're scared to keep doing their game because they know that we know how to play the game too. And a lot of people in that room, like they're mysterious characters. I mean, that's an online kind of Reddit room. We call the platform something different in the movie. We don't use the actual, we call the video game store something else. We call it Game Bites instead of GameStop. And I believe we call it Red Room instead of Reddit. But, I mean, people know what it's based on. And again, it's a fictionalized account. It's not like a documentary. It's a fictional movie. But, he's participating in that online room, and that's how he envisions everybody who's in that room with him. But in reality, it's just a guy on his laptop, watching this stuff, and they're plotting this thing that we're going to buy this stock. It's going to drive the price up. It's going to make these hedgers mad. And it's all based on proving to his brother, hey, I know what your stupid little game is, and I can play it too.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, is more compelling than fiction. And of course, it's based loosely, or maybe not so loosely, on that GameStop situation. I mean, that's a reality. I'll tell you the other thing I like about it, Ron, and those mysterious, scary characters there in the room that you were talking about. They're women. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I like looking at women. I like seeing in that clip we saw a lot of women, and that's a little bit of a departure from normal movie making sometimes.
Well, it's funny. The role of Jack Blade, who was the main person talking to me in the Reddit room, I originally pictured like a Tyler Durden style character for that role, because they're sort of they're the leader of the Red Room, and they want to disrupt the system, and you don't know what their agenda is. You don't know where they're at politically, even. You don't know exactly what their agenda is. There's just sort of this mysterious character who wants to disrupt the system. So I was thinking Tyler Durden from Fight Club, for anyone who knows Fight Club. So, I kind of envisioned it as a male role, but there was something about Liz Ann's trailer. I mean, I did an open casting call. I just kind of, put something on Twitter and social media, said, hey, I'm looking to fill these roles. Send me your stuff and I'll see if something's a fit. And there was something about her trailer. There was just something about her cadence where I totally, as soon as I saw her, I just thought, no, Jack Blade is a female and she's it. And I told her that. I'm like, look, originally I kind of thought this was going to be a male, but there's something about you that I feel like you gotta play this. And she was into it. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously the trailer is not the entire cast. There are more roles, both male and female, that need to be cast in the full film. But yeah, I guess our trailer was pretty female heavy in the characters, and everybody was an absolute blast to work with. So
I love it. And again, it's very easy for people to join us and support Ron, support a true left winger. I mean, Ron's the real deal. I mean, he's not a pretender like some of these progressives are that I'm encountering these days. He's the real deal. You can support this. Probably the easiest way is on Patreon, Ron.
sure, yeah, patreon.com/Ron Placone. And if you're interested specifically in the film, we do have a GoFundMe for people that just want to make a contribution. I give everybody a thank you on Get Your News On with Ron. And if you give $100 or more, you can actually get thanked in the credits too. And you can just go to GoFundMe.com and you can type in Left at Wall and it comes right up. You can also find it on my Twitter. It's my pinned tweet, and on my YouTube channel and my Rockfin channel or anything like that. And of course, if somebody wants to make a more formal investment in the movie, which is an actual investment where you get points back and stuff like that, please do email me if that is you.
Great. Well, the title of this show is Politicos, Penguins, and Punks, because I wanted to talk, if I could, maybe before we get out of here, a little bit on hockey and music, which Ron and I share. But we're
Sure.
going to start with the Politicos and the serious news of the day. And I wanted to see if you agreed with me on this, Ron, because again, I was kind of thinking of you this morning, putting the show together. Bob Dole and his passing. Bob Dole's big here because he's kind of out of the wheat fields of Kansas, and in Iowa. He was a winner of the Republican caucus back in the day here, I think. People liked him here. And I always look at that and I think of what you used to say about, my God, is that as good as we can do? I mean, to put it in the context, yeah, he wasn't as bad as some people. Maybe he's not as bad as Trump. Maybe he's not as bad as, the Bushes or something like that. But in this country, we ought to be able to do a hell of a lot better than that. And if you're sitting here thinking about how screwed up we are as a country and maybe even as a planet because of the climate and that type of thing, the people that are responsible for that, and we all bear some responsibility with our votes and participating through the years and decades, but it's people like Bob Dole. And
Mhm.
and I went out and did some searching on Google. I mean, you can't find an article that says anything critical about this guy at all. And I thought, that's important. And it kind of speaks to the importance of broadband access and the importance of Twitter and platforms like that, because you've really got to go there to get a picture that isn't just this, glad handing, backslapping remembrance of Bob Dole. You're not seeing both sides of the discussion of the issue. That's the way it struck me anyway.
Yeah, it seems like it's always that way, especially when somebody dies. And I understand that for some people, there's sort of this stigma, like, well, I don't want to speak ill of the dead or whatever, and that's fine if you feel that way, but you don't have to lionize a person or celebrate them or make it out like they were something they clearly weren't when they were alive. And you saw that happen, with Ronald Reagan, with John McCain,
Yes.
and now with Bob Dole, and it's all because they just talk a little nicer. It's like these people in their political careers did some terrible things. I mean, Bob Dole, did a lot to prevent anything from going further with healthcare. I mean, these people have spent their lives denying people healthcare that they themselves have. Like, they benefit from it and live a nice full life because of it. I think Bob Dole was 98 years old. Meanwhile, he did everything he could to stop healthcare from moving forward, even with what some of the stuff Clinton was trying to do, even which wasn't universal care. But so, you see these people get celebrated and you can't say anything ill about them. You can't even be accurate about how they were when they were alive. And I find it very tiring because it's like, no, this is not a system that should be celebrated. These are not people who should be celebrated. You don't have to speak ill of them if you don't want to. That's fine. But to really pretend they were something they weren't and to really whitewash, what they were all about. Well, we're just another propagandized nation then, which we are.
Uh, which we are. There's no doubt about it. I'll put it in this little context, and people, it's kind of went by people. Nobody paid any attention to it. But one of the more recent, and he was a very old man, pronouncements from Bob Dole was he came out on record and said, yeah, I'm a Trumpy. And he said, but I'm getting a little weary of it. I'm growing tired of it, just like you mentioned. He's a little
Yeah.
tired of it. But the point of it is, this is the essence of what's wrong with America. Bob Dole, you're a Trumpy. Why is he a Trumpy? Well, because that's his party.
Mhm.
That's the head of his party. And Bob Dole was a World War II hero of type. But to them, first and foremost, I think a lot of times is party, political party, this duopoly that we're involved in. The country and the rest of us are a distant second, maybe even a third. I mean, how in the hell could somebody like Bob Dole describe himself as a Trumpy? Well, that's his party, and that's who he's supporting, as opposed to the Democrats. And I thought, for me, that was kind of like the final black mark for Bob Dole.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, I'm very weary of all these people who they're like, I'm a Republican, but never Trump, because Trump and the GOP politically are one and the same. They are
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Yes, yes.
So what people like the Lincoln Project and all that stuff, all they're really telling you is, hey, we're fine with literal neo-fascism, because that's what the GOP platform is. They're neo-fascist. The Democrats are pretty much neoliberals, and we're the ping pong ball who's caught in between a volley of neo-fascism and neoliberalism. And they don't want the volley to end because one leads to the other 100% of the time. And so basically, they're just saying we're fine with neo-fascism.
Just don't
We
like
just
Trump.
Yeah, we just like subtlety. We want it to be someone like Bob Dole or someone like George W., like someone who just seems cool to get a beer with. The policies are still just as brutal, but we want a nice face on it. And it's such an exhausting system when you just think, and people just accept the most utter garbage. And it's not just limited to the GOP, of course, it's the Democrats too. I mean, and I get it. I'll make fun of someone like Beto O'Rourke or something like that, where it's because he's basically just a Republican who talks nicer himself. And I'll get these people like, the GOP. So it's like, I know the GOP's awful. I forget who coined this first, but it's a viral thing that went viral on the internet, as it should. And it's basically a lefty saying, look, I don't bash Democrats because I side with Republicans. I bash Democrats because they side with Republicans.
Yeah, that's great. I want to get to some of these comments. I want to put this one up because it's on the topic that we're talking about. This is from Old Hippie. It says Bob Dole was an obstructionist. That's what you were talking about, Ron, in particular when it comes to healthcare. He was Reagan plus more, and it wasn't more good. Yeah, I think he had a lot of similarities with Reagan, and he'd probably be proud and the first one to say that. But yeah, if anything, he was off the rails a little bit more than Reagan was. And I tell folks on my podcast all the time that I can trace just about everything that we're suffering from right now, the malaise in America. Maybe that's too soft of a term. You can go right back to Reagan with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's all I've known politically my entire lifetime is nothing but Reaganism. We've had
Yes.
Reagan or slightly worse. And by the way, that includes Obama, because Obama himself compared himself to Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
So, we've had Reagan or worse my entire freaking lifetime.
I'll run through some of these headlines of the day, and that's kind of what you get on Ron's show. Get your news on with Ron. And I follow the media very closely. I've always been interested in it. I was a very small part of it at one time. And this Chris Cuomo thing, people are really diving into this now. There's been some sexual misconduct allegations in addition to the thing with his brother. And I know you talked about it on your show quite a bit. Ron, the thing that I'm getting out of it, when I look at Chris Cuomo and this silver spoon thing, which he's a perfect example of, he looks to me like a quintessential example of manufacturing consent. He looks like the kind of guy that Chomsky was talking about, that was kind of curated, was kind of picked, was kind of groomed for this type of position, and the kind of person that the station managers and networks purposely go out and try to find and put in those roles, and they have huge influence on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like to, put down people's intelligence because, I mean, first of all, what right do I have? But sometimes it's like you can't help. I mean, a great example too is like Chuck Todd. I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to say things like this, but sometimes it is just so in your face that you can't avoid it. That's not a very bright person. Like the fact that Chuck Todd is on news, uh, quote, news is beyond parody. Like
Yes.
that guy is just not a very bright guy. He's not even sure if climate change is legitimate or
I
not.
know. Yeah.
He's not a bright guy. And I think Chris Cuomo kind of similar. He has no qualifications whatsoever to have the job that was handed to him. So yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely a mouthpiece for manufacturing consent, but he doesn't even realize that. He's just a
Yes.
blank suit, which by the way is most politicians. I mean that's just the absolute garbage system we have, and it's one of those things like I'm certainly not implying that everybody is totally not intelligent who's in media, nor am I qualified to make such a judgment. But sometimes you just can't help but be like, what is this? This guy, like it's Chuck Todd trends on Twitter constantly. And every single time, 100% of the time, the reason he trends is because people all across the political spectrum are just like, this guy is an idiot. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this guy's a freaking moron. He's just not a bright dude at all. And he's a newsman. What is this?
Yeah.
And they'll never fire him. They'll never fire him. I mean, it's such an insult to people's intellect. I mean, but all the cable news networks, I mean, they're not news networks at all. They're just PR machines. They're just PR machines for the corporations who own them. So I guess, Chuck Todd, Chris Cuomo, those are ideal employees.
Well, people don't understand how it works, and I discovered that many years ago, decades ago, even in local television. Um, we had an anchor that went to a major market, and they couldn't pronounce the word. They couldn't read the word legislature off the teleprompter. Literally, it had to be spelled out phonetically. I mean, and that's what we're talking about. People look at these anchors and hosts, and a lot of times, and you're right, Ron, they think that they're brilliant and that they're hardworking and that they're doing reporting and invest. Nah, that talking head thing is actually true with a lot of these folks. They're not doing this background work at all or writing anything. In a lot of instances, they're literally just talking heads. A lot of times, reading off of a teleprompter. That's what it amounts to. Well, I don't want the time to get away from us here. I wanted to get on to some of these other things, some of these issues that I wanted to talk to Ron about. And this one in particular, I've been wanting to talk to him about for several weeks, couple of months actually. And it's that UAW strike against John Deere, which was right here in the heartland, right in our backyard, Ron. And I know you watched that very closely. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, I think it was a very prominent lesson because there were a couple things going on simultaneously. There was the John Deere strike, and then over here, well, it was all over the country, but it was the John Deere strike was mainly in your neck of the woods in the Midwest. One of the things that was mainly in my neck of the woods in Los Angeles was the IATSE strike, which is the theatrical stage workers in television and film. And they basically threatened to strike, but they never did. And they got their settlement was not great. I mean, about half the people thought it was enough. Half the people were said this is nowhere near enough. And nobody was necessarily thrilled about it, but they did get a little something. The John Deere strike, they got a lot more. That was a pretty successful strike. So you can't help but notice, well, what were some big key factors in there? Well, the biggest one was one entity went on strike, the other just threatened it. So it seems to me like when it comes to striking, you actually got to do it. You can't just have the threat of it, or you might not get what you want. But when you actually do it, they got to give. I mean, they just got to give. So, yeah, I mean, the John Deere strike seemed to be a very successful strike. The ISC, not as much. And well, one went on strike, one didn't. You can't help but notice that. And I think Kellogg's, I'm not sure where they're at with Kellogg's, but I think they're getting ready to quote resolve that too. So hopefully they get, I'm always on the team of the workers, so I hope they get absolutely everything they want and then some.
Well, I got to admit, it's hard to shock me anymore, but I was a little bit shocked with that UAW, not the UAW, but Deere's initial offer, which was sub-inflation for a company that made $6 billion during the pandemic and is on their way to $7 billion, setting record profits. And the slap in the face, and I had that Deere worker, I don't have the clip up right now, but he said, it pissed us off. That was the wording that he used. I mean, it was an insult that they made that kind of money because they were deemed essential workers and they came to work during the pandemic, created these huge profits for John Deere.
Right.
And then they turn around and make this offer. And like I said, I was kind of shocked, but I kind of think that you probably weren't so shocked.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what they always try to do, and just again, we're talking about Reagan. I mean, within the past 40 some years, I mean the decline in the quality of life for the American worker and the way they just want you to do more and accept less, and they've created a society where people are desperate too. I mean, hey, we could look at broadcasting, the industry in which you spent a lot of time and which I guess I'm kind of in a new way or whatever. You go to radio stations now and you see one person doing the job of 4 or 5, and that's how it is in every industry now. I know in the case of radio, part of it is radio's not what it used to be, but a lot of it is too just the work culture we find ourselves here in the United States, where jobs are paying less and less and less. Prices have gone up while wages have remained stagnant. You can't get an apartment, especially here in Los Angeles. You can't get an apartment for what it cost in 2009, but wages are about what they were in 2009 and even further back. So, yeah, well, we're in a point of crisis. I mean, we've definitely reached it. And when you see these kind of micro victories of these strikes working out, it gives you a little bit of hope. But I think we need a strike on a mass scale. I think we need a full-on general strike. But that's easier said than done, unfortunately.
Well, that's the kind of the next question I wanted to ask you, because I know you support direct action and you support these strikes. And I know people like you, like us on the left, when this John Deere, which is a big one, when this strike occurred, we thought, okay, let's roll. I mean, here we go. Let's go across the labor spectrum with unions. Let's get energized here and let everybody, let's walk.
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't exactly happen. I mean, there's still some energy out there. What do you think the future of this is?
Well, I think a lot of these strikes, like on the micro level, like all these strikes here and there. I mean, I know there's at Starbucks they're trying to unionize in some of the Starbucks stores, and there's Kellogg's and there's John Deere and there's the IATSE and there's nurses. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I think it's good and it helps and it will help solve kind of the living wage crisis that we have. I mean, people love to call it the labor crisis. We don't have a labor crisis. People want to work. We have a living wage crisis. People aren't paying living wages, and they've gotten away with it for way too freaking long. I can use my hometown of Pittsburgh as a prime example. Within the same week in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my hometown, there was this Burger King store where everybody just walked out. They said, "We're done." And they put their aprons down, their name tags down, and they walked the hell out of there. Simultaneously, there was an ice cream store in town. They announced they were going to start wages at $15 an hour, which still isn't enough, but it's more than they were paying prior. And they got a record number of applicants. We don't have a labor shortage. People want to work. They just want to get paid a fair wage for what they do, which is a living wage. That's a fair wage, a living wage. If you want someone to work for you full time, they need to be compensated enough money to live a quality life. End of story. So it's sad that even needs to be said, but it does. When you let deregulation and neoliberalism rear its head to this point, when you let capitalism go to this point, which, by the way, this is what capitalism always does. We're not living in crony capitalism or corporatism. We're living at capitalism. This is what capitalism does 100% of the time. The people with the money write the rules, so they exploit as much as they can. And then when it reaches a point where society's going to break, they reel it in a little bit. If we really want to fix the system, we got to abolish capitalism completely. There is no other alternative. But Well, I mean, other than abolishing capitalism, the alternative is eco-socialism, in my opinion. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's I forget what the question was, but
Well, it actually leads us right into the next one. And then you were talking about the living wage. Well, God, every candidate was talking about this need for a living wage. Came time to get the federal minimum raised. They couldn't do it. Got overruled by
right.
the parliamentarian. Oopsie, couldn't get that done. Well, there's another one now that everybody's always talked about. And I saw on your show just recently, you were saying the Democrats are going to have to move their ass on or they're going to lose it. And that's Roe v. Wade. And this is, I talked on my show here well, maybe within the last week or so. On the Democratic side, you've got Roe v. Wade. On the Republican side, on the right wing side, you've got this Christian evangelical thing. Maybe a sidecar to that, guns maybe might be the other thing. But those are the two things that are paramount on these political parties, and it has to do with fundraising, obviously. But
Sure.
you're warning that if the Democrats don't do something, if they don't move on this, it's going to be lost for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it's all gonna unfold because part of me thinks like, well, gee, I don't know if either party really wants Roe v. Wade to go away because they just campaign on it so
Right.
hard.
It's
I
the
mean, the,
underpinning. Yeah.
I mean, the Republicans like that's their big thing. Like we're gonna overturn this, and then the Democrats like we will protect this. When in reality, let's be honest, the Democrats have not really done anything to protect Roe v. Wade in over 30 years. And they could do something right now. They could expand the Supreme Court and get us out of this mess immediately. They don't want to do it. They're not going to do it. So I can't predict exactly how this will unfold. I mean, I'm at the point where neither way would surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't mess with Roe v. Wade based on everything I just said. But then I also wouldn't be surprised if they did, just because, I mean, we are living in theocratic authoritarianism when you think about it. So, um, I mean, when I talked about it on my show, my biggest message was be prepared for what you might need to do if this goes away. And there's a lot of books out there that unpacks how to basically survive in a post-Roe society should you need that type of care. And I read that book. I read a book about that shortly after I got engaged because I kind of thought, well, I'm going to get married. It's not just me now. I'm going to have, it's not just me and the cat. There's a household where my wife's involved, and this is stuff that I should really know more firsthand. So in places like California, you're probably going to be okay, but in a place like Mississippi, it might get a little dicey. So I don't know what's going to happen exactly. Neither one would surprise me. And I encourage people, if you're in a place where you feel like you might be vulnerable, to really do some digging and find out what resources are available to you, because there are, a lot of good people out there who aren't going to take this laying down.
Well, it's an interesting dynamic. I don't like to keep scorecards or the horse race too much when it comes to politics, but I look at this and I think, those Democrats stand to lose some of that feminist support if they are unable to keep Roe v. Wade and don't do the right thing with their political party. And then the Republicans, you look at that evangelical side of that, supporting a lot of those candidates. You think, what in the hell? Why are they doing that? That's really weird because they're for war and they're for these human rights abuses and all that. Why would they be like? Well, it's all about this Roe v. Wade thing, and I mean, they feel like there's a better opportunity for those Republicans to repeal that, and so they've been in line with that. But if that happens, then those folks go soft on the GOP, and maybe they don't go to the ballot box like they have before. And if that happens, politics in America is different than what I've seen for, well, hell, they passed Roe v. Wade when I was coming out of high school, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to kind of, because for the evangelical vote, like they see Democrats as they see Democrats the way I wish Democrats actually were. I mean, they see they're like, they're these crazy lefties and they're these, and they want to have, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I wish that were true. I really wish that were true. So I can't picture the evangelical vote going over to Democrats just because Democrats are so ineffective at messaging. And, their first priority is not really winning either, because they won't do anything that'll upset their donors. And if they really wanted to get working class people, they would have to really embrace policies that their donors don't want them to embrace. So they won't do it. So, I mean, I think the evangelical vote, I don't think there's anything the Republicans could do that would really lose that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're running out of time here. I want to keep moving down the list. The next thing, Ron really is a national leader on this, and it has to do with net neutrality. Now, I mentioned earlier about how valuable some of these online platforms are and how important shows like Ron's are so that you can get the real truth, and particularly for people that are struggling out there, that need direction, that need help, that are looking for accuracy and truth. Well, this net neutrality thing casts all that in doubt. The net could become the province of the privileged, if they're not able to hold on to that. What's the latest, Ron?
Well, that might have been what you were thinking when you were saying, like, running out of time, because what's going on there is the FCC has been in a 2-2 gridlock since Joe Biden has taken office. Meaning that there are two anti-net neutrality folks at the FCC, two pro net neutrality folks at the FCC. So it's in gridlock. One of those two is Jessica Rosenworcel, who Biden moved to make head of the FCC, which is a good thing. She has a good track record. She's pro net neutrality. She'd make a good head of the FCC. So that's one of the things Biden did that I did like. He promised he would do that, and he's finally at the 11th hour and a half keeping that promise. So I'll take the victory there. That's good. She has been confirmed via voice vote to head the FCC. So she should be good, barring nothing unsuspecting, which there might be something unsuspecting, but barring nothing crazy, she should be good. She should be appointed head of the FCC. Biden's other pick, which was a good pick, was Gigi Sohn, another pro net neutrality FCC seat. So that would put the FCC at a 3-2 majority to bring back net neutrality, which is what they would plan to do. Now, Gigi Sohn has faced some opposition, mostly on the right, of people saying, oh, no, she's too far left. She's too this, too that. Now, here's a little interesting twist there if we're playing the partisan game, George. A lot of people at Fox News have been critical of Gigi Sohn, but people at OAN and Newsmax, which are very, very conservative outlets, they want to see her get appointed to the FCC. Why is that? Apparently, she's no friend to conservatives. Well, why do these super conservative networks want to see her appointed to the FCC? Because a free and open internet is not a right wing or a left wing idea exclusively. It goes beyond political lines. That's why over 80% of the public favors net neutrality. And that includes Republicans, Democrats, people on the right, people on the left, and everything in between. That's not a partisan thing. Net neutrality has favor all across the political spectrum, as it should. It's not a right-wing issue. It's not a left-wing issue. It's about a we the people issue, and it's about a free and open internet issue. So people at these smaller networks, even though they are hyper-conservative and probably don't agree with Gigi Sohn politically on a whole lot, they still value a free and open internet because they know without a free and open internet, they wouldn't exist anymore. So they want to see her appointed. So I'm hoping she gets through. And here's the thing, as far as time goes, if Jessica Rosenworcel isn't like formally cemented, confirmed by the end of the year, her term will have expired, which not only would mean that the FCC could be in a 2-2 gridlock, it could also mean that if Biden doesn't get any appointees in there, there will actually be a 2-1 gridlock in favor of anti-net neutrality. So it would be one of the first times in history, maybe the first time in history, where there would actually be a majority at the FCC that doesn't reflect what was just put in the White House. That doesn't reflect the will of the voters at all, which would be tragic. And it really goes to show you this isn't a super high priority for the Biden administration. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad of the appointees he made, and I'll take that victory. But this clearly isn't a priority of his. And why isn't it? Well, probably because he started his campaign with a bunch of Comcast executives.
Yeah. That's where he announced. Yeah.
That's where he announced. So,
Yeah.
so he's still, he's no friend to digital rights. He is doing some good appointees here because he pretty much has to, because it's like all eyes are on him. He made this promise. he doesn't really have a choice here. He's got to make some good appointees, and he's done that, so that's good. And hopefully it goes forward. But it's one of those things, if it does get hijacked, I don't know if they'll do a whole lot to have our back. So we have to be so loud that they don't have a choice but to do the right thing here. So I encourage people to go to battleforthenet.com, where you can contact your senators directly and you can pressure them to cement Jessica Rosenworcel's confirmation as head of the FCC. And you can also pressure them to get a vote and approve Gigi Sohn before the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm all for a free and open internet. I'm all for the First Amendment. I know a lot of people right down into the progressives are concerned about what's being said and what's being done on the internet. But my belief has always been, if somebody's doing something illegal, use the law to go get them, prosecute them, chase them down. I mean, if they're breaking the law, do that. Don't close down First Amendment rights or a free and open internet. And it's more important than it's ever been here in the post-pandemic world that we live in. And God, Ron, I mean, we're running out of time here. A couple of things. Now, before I get to, I want to close with a little bit of hockey talk and a little bit of music with you. But anything here that we've covered on the serious side that you want to reemphasize?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, I will give a quick plug since you brought up digital rights. I mean, net neutrality is a big passion of mine. The other big passion in that conversation is municipal broadband, which is city-owned internet. I know you follow some of that where you're at in Iowa, and there's actually been some municipal broadband development in Iowa. I did an episode today, Get Your News On with Ron, where I interviewed Ernesto Falcone of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a big digital rights organization.
I heard
and
that.
he really, he really broke down what's going on with the infrastructure bill, with the broadband portion of the infrastructure bill, which, don't get me wrong, in that infrastructure bill, there were a lot of things I did not like about it. But the broadband investment is one of the good things about it, amidst a lot of bad things. So we got to take that good thing and really make the most of it. And similarly, there was a broadband bill that just passed here in California that's going to give California the opportunity to make one of the biggest broadband investments this country has ever seen. And that will set an example for the rest of the country. So we are literally at a point in time and at a moment where we can revolutionize broadband in this country. And a comparison that Ernesto and other people make, it's kind of like when we were at that point in our history when electricity was only so widely available. And then they made it a public utility,
right?
And it changed. It was revolutionized. We have a chance to do that with the internet now. That's the point in history we're in with the internet and with technology. We can do that now with the internet. And instead of, surrendering to this organized big cable duopoly like we have now, where there are literally internet deserts in the country where they're just completely underserved.
Right
we
here.
can revolutionize our broadband, have better broadband at a better price, and make it a public utility, which it is. It's a utility in our lives, just like electricity, just like running water. And we have an opportunity to treat it like one. And we really break that down on today's episode with Ernesto. So I would encourage people to check that out. You can get your news on with Ron wherever you get your podcasts. If you want the audio podcast, if you want the video version, you can find it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ron Placone, or Rockfin if you do Rockfin. And you can also find it on my Twitter account too, because I stream on Twitter. So, and I'm at Ron Placone.
God, he's a smart guy. God, he's articulate too. I mean, I was surprised at. I mean, that guy can put his thoughts together. That was an excellent show. So Ron's right. Check that out. Okay, so let's run out here. I want to talk about music a little bit because Ron, as I mentioned at he's a comedian, but his show is not only comedy. He's a funny guy, folks, but he does these protest songs, and he's a musician. And so he's been a disc jockey and done those things that I've done in the past too. And he's a fan of the Hold Steady like I am, out of the Minneapolis area. And did they just do another online show, Ron? Because if they did, I missed it. And if
So they did. Well, they're back to in-person shows like many folks are. But what happened was, the way they tour is kind of unique. They do a couple nights in a city, and they do it over the course of a weekend so other people in the area can travel, and they try to make it like prominent cities. Like they'll do 3 or 4 nights in Toronto, then 3 or 4 nights in New York, and then a couple nights in Los Angeles, and maybe a night, Chicago, they'll do a couple nights. And that's the way they tour. And so they had a couple shows get canceled still because of the pandemic. LA was one of them, unfortunately. They were supposed to come in September. They ended up pushing it to 2022. So because they still had some canceled shows, when they did their massive night shows in Brooklyn, New York, they allowed one of the nights they sold online tickets for. So I got to see them on, I believe it was Friday night, that I got tickets and I got to watch it online. Watching a show online, and it's weird because it's not the same as just watching like a concert footage on YouTube or something like that. Like, it is more of an actual experience because the way they have it, it's like there's a Zoom room where you can see other people that are watching the concert
Yeah,
online
it's more
too.
raw. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little more, obviously it's not the same as being there,
right.
but it's a step closer than like just watching a show online. Um so it's a cool experience. I'm looking forward to my next Hold Steady experience being in person, but it was still a very, special treat since I couldn't be there physically in Brooklyn. I'm on the other coast, but yeah, so I got to catch them
They,
online on Friday.
they play a lot of Open Door Policy, their most recent release.
You know, the night I saw them, and they did a different set list every night, but the night I saw them, there were actually only a couple ones off the new one. I mean, they played Lanyards, they played the Feelers, and I think they did one Heavy Covenant, I think.
How did they didn't
But
play Family Farm? I know you
oh,
like.
yes. No,
Did
they
they?
did do
Okay.
Family Farm. Yeah, they did do
Yeah.
Family Farm. So
I,
yeah, they definitely played a few.
yeah.
But I was expecting a little more. But they did just a little more of everything. I mean, they did more older stuff than I expected, which I love their whole catalog. So pretty much any choices they make, I'm going to be pretty cool with. So I was very happy with the tune selection. But yeah, they do a good job, like kind of running the gamut of what they do.
They I know you like Lanyards in particular off of that album. I like
They did
Family
play that
Farm.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lanyards kind of reminds, of that West Coast vibe out there where you're at. Family
Yeah.
Farm is a little bit more reminding me of the Heartland. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. It's because of the story of Jason Oglesby. I'm going to bring this up on screen real quick. I don't know if Ron's familiar with this out there on the West Coast or not. And this is, I don't know if you've seen that photo or not in the center of the screen, Ron. That's a Pulitzer Prize winning photo of Jason Oglesby. Back in 2009, he rescued a woman that was drowning in the Des Moines River at a Lowhead Dam down there. Her husband had already perished as she was about to. The rescue workers couldn't get to her. And he went out on a chain, and you can see that a little bit in the photo. He's dangling from a crane. He was just a construction worker. He was my kind of guy. He was Ron's kind of guy. And he volunteered and went out there and got that woman out of the river and saved her. And so Ron's got this movie coming out. And I wanted to mention, Ron, I'm going to be part of a movie. It looks like, anyway. They're producing a movie about this. And they've interviewed me. I've been in a couple of little things, and I think it's going to be in there because I wrote the lyrics for a song, What Makes a Hero, that Bob Pace put the music to and performs.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, they're going to have that in the movie. And so this is coming up. But it's an uplifting story, but it's a tragedy because Jason Oglesby, just I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years after this passed away. And that's a little bit about the song, and that's about what the movie is. And I don't want to give it away, but it's got a little bit of that Family Farm feel to it. His story does, Ron, because he had demons, and he'd been to jail, and he had issues with drugs, and a lot of people were very critical and very hard on Jason, but he saved that woman's life, and it's a great moment, and it sounds like it's straight out of a Hold Steady song to me.
Oh, cool, man. Well, congrats on the movie. I look forward to checking it out. That's really cool stuff.
Yeah,
And
that'll be cool.
yeah, Family Farm. The one tune off the new album, if we're getting like kind of insider baseball talk here, the one tune off the new album that they did not play the night I saw them, they did play it throughout the 4 nights because they posted the set list every night. But I was hoping for Spices, and they didn't
Yes.
play that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite tunes as well off that. I mean, Lanyards is like my favorite off the new album, and they did play that. So
All right, great. Well, I don't like to go too much beyond an hour, and we're already there. So I just want to say this, Ron. Man, the Penguins are looking good. They're coming back on. Crosby came out of COVID protocol for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's getting his mojo back, and Gensel is on fire. And that Tristan Jarry, their goaltender. I mean, they're starting to look like they're the real deal. And Malkin isn't even back yet, so you got to be feeling pretty good about the Penguins.
Yeah, they're doing all right, man. Jari is playing a lot better. He still has his moments where he kind of falls short in the moments you need him most. And so yeah, I mean, I enjoy the game no matter. I mean, even if they're not so great, I'm still going to enjoy the season. But I think if they can make it to the playoffs, which I think they definitely have a good shot, that'll be the real test because the net has been an issue for them.
Yeah.
And like if Jari does get on a hot streak, which I hope he does, and I hope he plays well, it'll be like, okay, can you continue that through the playoffs though? Because when you kind of just fall apart during the playoffs, that's when you lose real quick. So we'll see. But yeah, they have been looking good recently. So yeah, and I got some I guess I was a pretty obvious person to buy for my birthday recently because I got tickets from different people, but I got tickets for every game in the area. I got tickets to Penguins Anaheim and Penguins Kings. So
Wow.
so I'm looking forward to that. That'll
Oh
be fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, and Jari, just to close, they're if you're a goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins, you're always going to see some action because I mean their offense. So I mean, primarily they got Letang back there. He's a great defenseman, but he's also offensively minded. So
He
you got
is.
to
Yeah.
have good goaltending, and they got that for many years with Fleury, obviously. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
I was a big fan of the Flower. I didn't
Oh
want to
yeah,
see him go. I mean, I understand why they didn't really have a choice, but yeah, I was I was bummed out when Fleury went, especially since in retrospect they would have been better off keeping him. But I
yeah.
mean, at the time that was kind of tough to know. But he's I feel weird when I talk about like age because it's like they're all like my age and stuff.
Yes.
But in hockey years, that's very so in
Yeah.
hockey years, Fleury is not young,
Yeah.
but he's still playing like he is. So
All right. Well, that's great. We're running over the top of the hour here, but that's a-okay with me. Ron Placone, I really appreciate you coming on Podcast by George once again. Give us the URLs. They can see that on the backdrop behind you. But again, for people that want to stay in touch, want to get in contact, what's the best way?
yeah, Twitter at Ron Placone. I'm also at Ron Placone on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Ron Placone on Facebook. You can find my YouTube channel at Ron Placone. Get your news on with Ron wherever you get your podcasts. Patreon.com/Ron Placone if you want to be a patron and get a theme song. And for tour dates, which I actually have some.
Oh yeah, I've got.
RonPlacone.com, and I got tickets available now for Pittsburgh, Toronto. I'm going up to Canada. Speaking of hockey, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, Boston, New York City. Yeah, there you go. So all those tickets are available at RonPlacone.com. I'll be announcing some West Coast stuff too in the not too distant future, and probably a little bit of international stuff too. So there's going to be some tour dates next year. So.
Yeah, man, those are hockey capitals. My God, you'll be. I don't know if you can sneak into some games when you're out on the road, but those are big hocky cities.
Yeah, there's not a ton of nights off. It's a pretty compact
Yeah.
run, but I don't
I
know.
hope you
Maybe
get it because I know it broke your heart when you got canceled out because of the
2
pandemic.
years
So,
in a row,
yeah,
man. Yeah, it's been heartbreaking, but yeah, so it'll be fun to get back out there.
All right, folks. I look for him at those sites that he mentioned. You can also see him on the Jimmy Dore show, and look for him on look for that movie when it comes out. I mean, and go throw him a few bucks so that we can get this thing on. I want to see that show. That's for sure. Well, Ron, we'll circle back here again in a matter of weeks, if not well, hopefully not months. Hopefully weeks. We'll get back with you.
Thanks for having me, George. Always good to talk to you, man.
And folks, like I always say, if you like Podcast by George, if you like guests like Ron Placone and getting this perspective that you don't get in a lot of places, please go to podcastbygeorge.com. That's the easiest place to get all of these podcasts in their entirety, not the edited versions or the short clips. You can get the whole show in audio or video format at podcastbygeorge.com. And when you see it on Facebook, Like us there, subscribe to us on YouTube, and ring the notification bell if you will. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George Liveline.